Sorry, I've been back to back all morning, so go ahead and fill me in on your dog here.
Yeah, and I'm Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Snippet.
Snippet.
Yeah.
Snippet the Whippet.
Snippet the Whippet, yes. Yes, go on. Yeah, so he turned 2 in September.
Okay.
And we got him when he was about 10 weeks. And just at about probably like adolescence, I think, is when it seems like we started just noticing some reactivity to other dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're mainly here for.
Okay. Is he social off leash?
He is, yes. It's just, like you say, it's just certain dogs. Like he's here right now for daycare.
Okay.
And they said
I was gonna
he's been
say I
doing
thought I recognized the name. Yeah.
Yeah, and they said he's been doing fine
Mm-hmm.
here. But it's mostly, I think, our challenge is when we're on walks
Mm-hmm.
with him, where there's just certain dogs he will see while we're walking, and he
Mm-hmm.
will just start barking, and it feels or sounds aggressive.
Mm.
And we've just tried a lot of. He was in a training before where we did a lot of positive reinforcement, trying to make sure we keep our attention
Mm-hmm.
together. But yeah, I guess we're at a place where we'd like to just get some
Kind of
more
wrap that up. Yeah. No, I
opinions.
understand. Anything else in regards to like even like obedience stuff that you're trying to achieve, or is it just mainly the reactivity you're concerned?
Oh, he could be a better walker. We're working on it. I mean, squirrels and rabbits, he pulls towards, which is fine, but sometimes he just really wants to lead the way and pulls very hard to get when he knows we're close to the park.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I'd like him to maybe heal, I guess, a little better.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and his recall. I would say recall.
And what is it when they're just paying attention to you, just like, look at me,
Okay.
that kind of thing.
Right.
Okay.
When he sees another dog and he starts barking, it's like we don't exist.
Yeah. No, he's too tuned into what's going on with the dog. Were you trying to do in person or kind of daycare boarded train type program?
I feel like we're the ones who probably need to be trained.
Uh-huh.
So that's where I feel like it would be helpful to be trained to
Sure.
help us
Yeah.
go through training together. But I'm also open to like a hybrid of both.
Yeah, so like the board and train and daycare and trains are technically like a hybrid because you get follow-up in-person sessions anyway, but you do learn more with the in-person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like let's say you brought him here, like a lot of times we don't see stuff with the dogs, so then it's like, well, if we don't see it, like how do we address it? But it's
Right.
because we run a structured daycare, right? So then the dog learns like, okay, well, I'm not going to get away with this behavior, so then we don't see it. But then for the owner's seeing something different, right? And the owner's like, are you even doing your job? We're like, well, we are, but it's like if a policeman tries to pull you over in a random person, you're going to obviously listen to the policeman, right? Because they come with authority. So it's the same thing for the dog.
Yeah.
Okay. So in person is great because you do learn a ton more. The cons of the in person are simply they take longer, which isn't a big deal. But at this time, with the weather changing, people tend to walk their dogs less. So that's usually like another thing that factors in. So just a heads up on that. So I have a client right now whose dog is much more complicated than I anticipated. And I play everything's by ear. And we just had our 4th class where we finally had like what I would call like a breakthrough with the dog. And the owner came back and was like, oh, like we had only 2 difficult times to get the reactivity to stop. Difficult meaning it took them 10 seconds to get the dog to cut it out. Whereas this was a dog who was not cutting out, period. I said, okay, well, there's no point in us meeting right now because we still have, because that's why they're here. They went over the reactivity. I was like, take some time to just make sure that this is sinking in before I see you next, okay? And I don't expect an issue here. Typically when we have dogs that are difficult with reactivity, it's almost always a bully power breed type dog. A Rottie, German Shepherd, Pit Bull, Bull Terrier, Bulldog. Those types of dogs are usually the ones that we expect that are more likely to be difficult reactivity, okay? I actually just did a reactive whippet case over the summer.
Okay.
She came from Wisconsin,
Okay.
yeah. Her dog did great. I think it was just the one class, maybe two, and then she hadn't seen any reactivity.
Was their dog also with other dogs, reacted to other dogs?
Yes.
Or was it okay, so I read one where it was off-leash training, but.
Yes, so
Okay.
she did both.
Okay.
She came to us for reactivity stuff, but she was a very diligent owner that she would not only stop the reactivity, but got her dog to be off-leash trained as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it just comes down to what the owner wants and what they're needing and everything. But the goal is always the problem that we're seeing, right? So obviously the reactivity is the first thing we want to address. Once we move past reactivity, then we can build on other skills if the owner would like. Okay, so with whippets, with the positive reinforcement, reason why you hit a limitation there was because if the dog is under stress, right? Because reactivity comes from somewhere. The dog is just not being reactive for the sake of being reactive, right? And one thing I can see is your dog is anxious, right? The way he's opening the mouth, panting, whining right now, right? Is he has some anxiety. Now, do you see this whenever you take him to anywhere foreign, new?
He gets like this whenever we bring him here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I even called once to just like, is he okay? Because it feels like he's having the dog version of a panic attack.
Sure. Has he been to a daycare before?
He's been to, you know what? No,
Did he stay overnight for a week?
he did. He went to he went to a week or a week of training.
Mm-hmm.
At,
That's right. You said for the positive reinforcement.
at
training?
Tucker Pups, and then we did in-person training. The levels training at Urban Pooch.
Okay.
So this was his first. So this has been his first daycare, during the day.
I see. Sure. So a couple things can be: one, he naturally is or genetically an anxious dog.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that may be it.
And even though we run a structured daycare, doesn't mean that the dog understands what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had the happiest, luckiest golden retrievers walk through that door, and then we tell the owner your dog's probably gonna be stressed, right? They're like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah. They're like, but look at my dog. I'm like, I understand that, but your dog does not know what this is. You know what this is. You go on my website, you see videos, you know what this is. Then the owner leaves, and all of a sudden the golden retriever's like, where are you going?
Yeah.
Where am I? Who is this person? Right? Who are these dogs? And then you start to see them just shaking in the kennel and they're panting and stuff. And eventually they ease into the environment and then they're fine, right? But we always anticipate some kind of stress. Plus, he's most likely never been in this room either, unless they're doing some kind of training with them, which I doubt. So with the remote collar, it's going to help cut through this here. Okay? So where he's going to actually be able to relax because anxiety is a stress response. And then reactivity is also a stress response. Okay? So if he sees a dog and he feels threatened in any shape or form, reactivity is his way of self-defense, right? Bluffing in terms of keep away or stay away from me, right? But if the dog comes up to him, doesn't mean that there'll necessarily be any kind of aggression. It can be just a bluff to help keep that dog away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, even what surprises me is if he will choose, it'll be a dog that looks so, a small dog that's not as intimidating,
Sure.
Not starting anything with it. It could be an elderly dog, or it could be a pit bull. It will be, the other dog will look very friendly and he will still choose to
I don't see
park his
it.
head off.
I don't see it as aggressive. I think he would like to go up and meet them and play because there's a dog in the neighborhood. When he sees her coming, he gets down, like he's ready to play. But when she gets a little closer, then he'll start barking, and then they can't really interact because he's barking. So I think some of it he just wants to meet that dog.
Sure. So the barking can come from a couple places. It can be frustration, as you're describing, or it can be aggression, or it can be stay away, right? When it's frustration based, what can happen? Let's say we get the situation. He sees a dog. It looks like he wants to say hi, and you're holding him back, right? So now you can't get to the stimuli. Now he starts barking in frustration, right? And let's say you're to still continue to bring in that stimuli, you may see an aggressive response there, not because he was aggressive, but because he was so frustrated that the way they outlet it is through physical contact. It happens a lot, okay? Because people will then think, oh, my dog's aggressive. I'm like, no, like your dog was just frustrated. You built all this frustration, and then finally they got to the object, and they just let it out.
Yeah.
Okay? But then that dog might reciprocate because the dog's like, hey, you just bit me.
Yeah.
Right? So then it gets a little bit more complicated.
Would you recommend, I mean, we've had one trainer who said, maybe your dog needs like anti-anxiety
Prozac,
medication.
whatever. Sure.
Yeah.
In my opinion, they don't do much.
Okay.
I say the word sedate, whether or not it's medically correct is another thing. But it really just puts the dog like in this kind of zonked mentality.
Yeah.
And more often than not, it does not do anything.
Okay.
The only time I've seen medication help a dog was a client whose dog used to get car sick and they used to drive to Michigan a lot. So he would always throw up in the car. They asked me if we could train it out of him. I said probably not because it's not anxiety-based vomiting. It sounds to me like it's motion sickness, right?
Okay.
So the veterinarian gave them some kind of anti-anxiety med, which really just zonked the dog out the entire trip.
Okay.
And I told them that's probably your best bet, otherwise, because your dog's sleeping,
But for as far as training, yeah.
Correct, because we get a lot of dogs that are, our specialty is aggression, whether human and or dog-based aggression. And the most common thing the veterinarians do is prescribe them fluoxetine, triazidone, doggy Prozac, or gabapentin. And all those dogs still want to bite people. Okay, or attack dogs, whatever. They're not. It's not an anxiety thing. It's a structural thing. May I take your leash?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you. So the cause for anxiety can come from a couple of places. It can just be genetics. It can also be a dog that's unable to settle. So you see how he keeps getting up, right? So that's the brain's inability to relax. Now, part of this can be because of anxiety, but it can also be a part of overstimulation, okay? The difference between the two, because they look very much alike, is anxiety does not want to settle. It keeps moving, right? So you see him get a little defensive here. There we go. Overstimulation is typically a lack of formal boundaries that has, the dog has no real limitation. There we go. Has no real limitation because no one's really formally told the dog no. Because our type of discipline is we say no, we clap our hands, we shake a can of pennies, a water bottle, right? But for a dog, that's not consequential because another dog will simply nip and or bite them to tell them to not do something, right? So it's physical contact. We don't do that with our dogs, right? It's not natural to us to bite our dogs. We tend to do redirect with food. We tend to do the nicer approach because we're taught that physicality to dogs is abusive or unhealthy, right? But they're physical animals. So like this here is a dog bite. Okay, it's 10 stitches. So the reason why this is escalating here is because I'm being strict. I'm telling him you have no option but to stay at my side in a sitting position, right? So this here is 10 stitches because the dog did not want to go in the kennel. Okay? So I tried to load him in. He had never been in the kennel before. Decided I'm not going in there. Turned up and just bit my hand. Okay, it was a great day. He was here yesterday for daycare. So people hear that and they're like, a Great Dane, really? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, because he had never been in the kennel before and he wasn't trying to be aggressive. He was just saying, I don't want to go in there, right? But he used physicality to deter me from putting him in there, which worked, right? Now, he's not an aggressive dog. That's why he continues to come back because he wasn't being threatening. He was simply saying, I don't want to go in there because I've never been in there, right? So, this is all making sense? There we go. Like this. Okay? So here, because his brain wants to keep moving, and I'm doing the opposite. I'm not allowing him to move, right? So the difference between being, like when you had the leash, and he was over there, and you walked over, went over there, and he came over here, he laid down, and he stood up and went over there, and he came over to you, right? Is he's practicing the anxiety, okay? Here, if I'm just telling him to hold still, he has to contain that anxiety. Okay, so that's why we'll call confronting it. But it has to go somewhere. That's where we get this. Okay? Now, with remote collar, this most likely would just go away on its own. Okay? It's not something that we're really correcting a dog for because he's technically not doing anything bad. Right? But it doesn't mean that we can't correct it because people think like when we think of physicality, because we think of pain or hurt, it's counterintuitive to us to think that physicality would help them relax. But that's what a dog would do. So like if you ever seen dogs playing and one dog gets out of hand, you may see a dog correct them to bring down the energy, right? So they're saying, look, that's not wanted here, right? So they correct each other. But right now, with what I have, which is simply just this leash and of course my hand, I can't cut through this anxiety, okay? With remote collar, I would be able to, because then I could match his energy level. Okay, so if he's at a 10, the E-Collar can match his 10. Right now, in terms of what I'm doing, I'm like at a 2. Okay, question?
Yeah, so the E-Collar, so that's something we're learning. We haven't
Yes.
used it before. And I've heard you can use sound, or you can use vibration, or I guess I'd like to just learn more about when you say you matched his anxiety with a 10. Like what?
Yes. So have you guys ever been to a chiropractor or physical therapist?
Yeah.
Have you ever had STEM?
No.
TENS unit? Moves the muscles?
Oh, it kind of gives a little,
Yes,
a little.
that's an E-Collar.
Okay.
Okay, so an E-Collar is a miniaturized TENS unit. It's a muscle contractor. So we tend to think of it as electrocution, right? People always think like, oh, you're shocking the dog, you're electrocuting the dog. I'm like, that's just ignorance, because it's not that technology at all. Okay, because if it was, I would think it'd be illegal.
Yeah.
So they use this technology in humans all the time. Okay, it's just a miniaturized TENS unit, so it's a muscle contraction. Okay, some models have a sound or vibration as well as the stim.
Okay.
We don't use sound or stim.
Okay.
Okay, so going back to the concept of dogs being physical creatures, right, is the E-Collar is a physical sensation. Have you guys ever seen a prong collar?
Yeah.
It looks like a medieval torture device, right? It's designed to mimic a dog bite. That's the way it looks. Okay? Because dogs bite each other. So a prong collar and remote collar are the two most effective tools in my opinion. But the distance between prong and E-Collar is very great. Because with the prong collar, what I would have to do here is correct him using the leash to create this kind of biting motion. But like, let's say he's anxious of the situation, right? And I'm correcting him, and he's, it can kind of reaffirm for him in his mind that this is a place he should not like because of that correction. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, it's kind of like, let's say there's an emergency and you're going to call 911 and someone's like getting mad at you for trying to call 911. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make sense. You're like, why would you not let me do this? So same for the dog. So if he's under stress for whatever given reason, when we correct him, he doesn't understand the logic there. Okay? Plus, if he's in this intense state and I try to correct with the prong, it may not be enough to cut through this, right? Even if I give my harshest correction, he may not snap out of this mentality. With remote collar, we have 127 levels, okay, in increments of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 127. So we start low, we work our way up. So let's say if I were to try to correct this with the E-Collar, I might be at 90 before he finally goes, okay, I'm going to snap out this anxiety. You ever seen a show or it's on TV or a movie where someone's panicking and then someone slaps them, right? And then they just kind of come back to like, get a grip, right? It's like the same kind of concept, except we work our way up until we find the number that's going to break the intensity.
Okay.
But it's not, we don't just come in doing that. There's a whole process to it, okay? So when we do TENS unit with humans, they start low and they work their way up, right? And they say, hey, tell us when this becomes too much. At some point you say, oh, that's too much, I don't like that. And they go, okay, and they dip it down and they go, how does that feel? And you say, that feels better.
Okay.
Because the stim has to move your muscles to do its work, whether it's ease back pain, break up muscle scar tissue, or anything like that, right? With dogs, it's very similar. We start low, we work our way up, and then he tells me what's too much and what's too low, okay?
It's sometimes hard to understand because it feels like, if he's super anxious, it's, you know what I'm saying, it's like hard to
How it
understand that
can,
it's not like it almost feels like it's too much right now because he's so...
yes, but
So,
there's no other way to get through that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here.
Right,
If
right.
the food worked, we wouldn't be here,
Right,
okay?
right.
So, and this is because I only have so much,
Yeah.
right, that I can do here.
Yeah.
So this is where people, they feel like, wow, like, is the dog okay?
Yeah.
Internally, no.
Yeah.
But what's going on?
Right. Nothing.
Nothing.
That's what's,
Yes.
yeah.
So
No.
we don't come in correcting this.
Right.
This is not the problem.
Yeah.
This is the outcome of the problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So the first thing that we always teach with the E-Collar is the heel command, okay, which is going to help address your leash pulling. Because it allows us to layer in physicality and discipline in a non-confrontational way. Okay? It's not the heel that's helping your dog. It's the discipline behind the heel. It's the muscle contraction, and I like to think of the E-Collar as a bite on the button, if you will. Okay? So when we're teaching structure with the E-Collar, you're most likely going to see an escalation in anxiety. Okay? Not this kind of anxiety in response to the E-Collar. Okay? Because when he's under stress, he gets anxious, right? So when we introduce the E-Collar, which is a stressor, you're going to see a heightened anxiety. The difference is, with the heel, most people walk their dog 3 times a day, 7 days a week, right? So it allows you to introduce him and expose him to the E-Collar 3 times a day, 7 days a week, right? So the way to learn how to handle stress is to have stress happen and learn how to handle it, right? So like me, I didn't start my career at this stage. I started my career as a young man in his early 20s who went to the park and handed out business cards and one by one built up clientele over 10 years and then made a lot of good decisions and now at this level. And I have greater goals, right? But this comes with a lot of stress. Okay, I went from myself as an only, sole proprietor to now having like 13, 14 employees. Okay, and then 2020 happened. That was kind of stressful. How am I going to pay rent? How am I going to continue my business, right? But I was able to handle all that stuff because in the years building to this, I had stressful things happen and I handled it and I learned how to handle it, right? So here, same thing for this guy. It's counterintuitive to us to think that a stressor can help a dog. But the difference is that it's physical, okay? And we have videos where you can watch and see like where it's in effect because it's counterintuitive to us to think that, right? But you see how passive and just calm I am?
I know. Yeah.
Because this is normal. For what you're dealing with, this is not uncommon. We have a dog here. I'm going to see him later today. His name's Kuma. He was the exact same way. They did one class, and on the first class, within 5 minutes, he was sleeping at her feet. Okay? Yes. But it's counterintuitive to us, okay? And then, because we tend to want to console this.
Right.
But petting is reinforcing.
We're reinforcing that.
Because you're telling them, yes, you should be anxious. I understand your intention. Because we would do that for humans. We would hold them and we would, rub them and say it's going to be okay. But we understand that. He just thinks that you're telling him you should be anxious in this setting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like when we train dogs to be aggressive on command for protection training, when they start to become defensive, guess what we do? We pet them. Good. Yes, we want you to lunge and bark at this person because we want to harness that aggression. So when we do that, I understand the owner wants to console, but they're really telling the dog, keep being reactive.
You're thank you for being reactive.
Correct. Right? So with the remote collar, the first thing we always cover is the heel, because 3 times a day, 7 days a week, you get to practice and expose him, which builds his confidence, okay? Physicality toughens dogs up, because when they're with their puppies, guess what they do? They nip and bite and poke and prod at them. There's a video on YouTube, I believe it's a golden retriever, there's a litter of puppies. One puppy is antisocial. It's in the corner by itself. And you see all the other puppies being puppies, right? You see the mom come over, pick up the puppy, bring him over, drop him down. Puppy's whimpering and whining, tries to run away, picks it up, brings it back, and starts poking at it. You see all this yipping and right? And everybody's like, oh my God, this and that. And then the other people are like, no, that's Mother Nature. She's toughening up the puppy because if she doesn't, that puppy's not going to survive in the wild. They don't understand someone's going to adopt that puppy at 2 months, right? Physicality. toughens them up, okay? But we're again told not to. We're told that's wrong. We're told that's abuse or inhumane. But then we end up with dogs that get lost, like this, okay? You see the difference now? Now, it's not going to stay like this. Give it another minute or so, he's probably going to get up and he's going to S-bed again.
Yeah.
But I'm wearing him down because emotionally, you can only stay in this state for so long. It's like getting angry. You can't be angry forever, right? You can't be mad at someone forever. Sooner or later you let it go, right? Unless something were to trigger that anger again, you got to let it go. So here, I'm just being consistent. This is him expelling energy. To be like this takes energy.
Yeah.
So eventually the brain goes, okay, well, I'm getting tired. They start to settle. Okay, because in the beginning, the first 10, 15 minutes, sit, stand, sit, stand, right? But now I'm starting to get him lay down, and we got like a 30-second gap of where he was down here, right? So the longer I were to have him, the more he would dip in terms of his intensity level. E-Collar, fast, or should be fast, okay?
I know, it feels kind of crazy because it's like we're just all sitting here together and he seems so
For whatever reason.
distressed.
For whatever reason,
Yeah.
right? And it doesn't matter why.
Yeah.
It's not going to help us find the answer. I already know the answer. Structure,
Yeah.
physicality, discipline, boundaries. Now what is left over? Okay, because this is the outcome of a problem. This is not the problem. So when dogs are reactive, reactivity is not the problem. It's the outcome of a problem. Okay? So with the healing exercise, I would gamble all this nonsense just goes away on its own. Okay? If it doesn't, it's okay. We can use the collar to correct this, to teach him that this mindset is not wanted. Okay? You can disagree with this. And the reason why you can do it with e-collar is because it's a neutral. He doesn't know where it's coming from. It doesn't know it's coming from me, from you, from God, right? It's from nowhere. But with the prong collar, if I correct him, it's personal.
Yeah.
So if I get a dog that's scared of me, I don't correct that dog with a prong collar. Or physically, because that's just going to reinforce the dog's fear of me, because they're anticipating harm, right? E-collar. Now I can correct the dog for trying to bite me. The dog don't know where it's coming from. The dog just learns if I try to bite you, this happens. Okay? So, leash walking fixes both of problems. Leash pulling, very common. Leash reactivity, also very common. Heel tackles both of those things, okay? It will also indirectly help address this, okay? So the first class, we cover the heel. I teach you to train him. You go off and do your homework. You come back class number 2. What did we see? Oh, Jesse, the reactivity, like 80% better. He only lunged 2 times this week, like it's crazy. And like, okay, cool, like we made a big chunk of progress. Where did we see the reactivity? And then I tweak what we're doing according to what you're telling me, okay? In terms of this, I would anticipate you would show up. He would be anxious, but not like this type of anxious, okay? And then we see, does exposure over time just help him come more to a place of stability, okay? Where he doesn't show up into an unknown place, whatever, and is on edge the entire time. Okay, he should be able to just come in and go into a resting state, okay? So by the second to third class, we should already know where we're at in terms of progress, okay? The rest of the program just comes down to like, what is it that you're wanting to address? So like we have the reactivity, we have this anxiety, of course. Recall, right, would be something you'd want to cover. I'd most likely cover stationary work, because stationary work for dogs that really want to move is good, because we're going opposite to him, right? So like right now I'm going opposite to him. He wants to move, I'm saying you can't move, right? So same thing with stationary work. I'm not sure if you've seen like our videos where the dogs are on the placemats and stuff, and they're just kind of laying around. And there's dogs training, there's dogs in play, there's puppies, there's dogs on treadmills. There's a lot of activity, and they just have to be hanging out, passive, while all that's going
That
on.
would be really difficult. I know when we're out, if he sees another dog off leash running, like he has a really hard time.
Mm-hmm. This is just frustration.
Yeah. I know.
Is he on a harness?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's about to break it. One of the plastic prongs already broke off.
Okay, so harness empowers his anxiety.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna flip this. So he's not aggressive. He's just, how do you say, overly stressed. And it has to go somewhere.
Ah.
It's okay. There we go. Okay, there we go. Good. So now I have more immediacy in the communication with him, but it also keeps my hands safe. It's okay, you can relax.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to get E-Collar.
So, one thing is, I understand your energy.
Yeah.
Okay, is that it empowers him
Yeah.
because you're showing him
I know.
that there is something to worry about, because he doesn't understand that you're worried about him,
Well,
right? He's just going, if you're worried,
yeah.
then I'm worried. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll stop looking at him.
Your best bet is always neutral or indifferent,
Okay.
right? So like when he became defensive, right, and started snapping at my hand and stuff,
Yeah.
I didn't take it personally.
Yeah.
I didn't go, oh my God, right?
Yeah.
Because I understand with this level of intensity in terms of his anxiety, he's gonna get frustrated. If I would have backed off and said, here, take your dog,
Yeah.
I'm just making your problem worse.
Right.
Okay? Now here, I'm not putting a ton of pressure on him. He see how I'm just holding with two fingers here?
Yeah.
He determines how much I need. So in the beginning, he was super resistant. Now he's actually giving me more compliance. He's just up here because no one's challenged him like this. But that's why there's still problems. Okay? Is in order to make progress, we have to step out the comfort zone. Otherwise, we stay stuck. And this is very unhealthy in terms of like, imagine just like being like this whole time. Because dogs can't turn off. The dogs don't self-regulate well, okay, like a human could. So he needs someone to help him turn off so he can learn that there is another option outside of being like this. Okay? Does that make sense? It's okay.
Yeah.
Relax. There we go. Okay? But you see my calmness? That's the energy you have to feed is passive. You get what you give. Okay, if you're giving this kind of energy, like even right now you're like this,
I
right?
think you're not looking at him. You're not looking into his eyes.
But he's right here to me.
I know.
Like I feel
I
it.
know.
I can feel it, right? So you wouldn't do this kind of stuff. This is because this is what I have. Okay, and I'm trying to have a conversation. And if I let this go, he's just gonna be
Yeah.
all over the place.
Yeah.
So in regards to like length of time and cost and everything, if your primary concern is this behavior and the reactivity, I would put you at a 6-class range. Okay, the first class is always heal, and then there's a second part to the heal. So first class sets the foundation. Go off and do your homework. Second class, feedback. Right? How does he do when he comes in here? Does he just go into a relaxed state? If he does, great. We just made a ton of progress in the first class. We're working the second half heal. Go off and do your homework. By the third class, you're like, holy shit, Jesse, like, dog's doing great. I go, awesome. There's no need to do any of this stuff now. Recall. Come and call by the third class. Because this member isn't the problem. This is the outcome of a problem, okay? If by the third class we're still struggling with stuff, we're still struggling with reactivity, then we have a class working on the reactivity, okay? Then the fourth class will most likely be recall. By the fifth class, pending everything's progressing well, stationary work. Teaching that brain how to turn off, okay? The sixth class, variable. Are we lacking anywhere? Are we still struggling with reactivity for any reason? Are we not getting the recall? We need to review it. So the sixth class is simply the variable, okay? If everything progresses as I think it should, it's probably going to be 2 on heal, 3rd on recall, 4th on place, which is stationary work, 5 and 6 would then be your variables, okay? Which can be, if this is all going well, then we go into teaching more stuff, Okay, but it's not because I think the obedience is going to help you. It's because it gives you more things to apply discipline behind. Remember, it's not the obedience that's helping him. It's the discipline. Okay, it's the muscle contraction. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Questions so far?
Questions?
And if you want to get a visual, I believe his videos are up. The dog that I mentioned that I said is just like this, your dog.
The whippet, yeah.
His name, it was not a whippet. The behavior leads the same thing.
Okay.
Dog's name is Kuma.
Okay.
Just skip the halfway through the consultation, and then you go, yup, that was Snippet.
Okay.
Just like this, except
Okay.
Kuma actually never settled. He's settling now, right?
Yeah.
Kuma did it, and then we had our first class. We've only had one class. Today would be her second class. And you see the class, and you're gonna see like, holy crap, like Jesse wasn't lying. Like within a few minutes, this dog was passive.
Yeah.
Okay, because of remote collar and the discipline. And that she's also a client that did, I know one for sure, I think potentially two training programs, and her dog is still reactive and anxious. Okay, so questions on any of that stuff?
Is are the videos from the whippet up that you were trying to?
The whippet, his name was Fox Mulder.
Okay.
So either look up Fox and or Mulder.
Okay.
Okay. And you're going to see him. He was exactly the same. He was an anxious dog.
Okay.
And in the videos, because we were doing in succession, you're going to see him look anxious.
Yeah.
Okay. But then she tagged us on her Instagram. I forgot his Instagram is Spooky Boy, SPOOKYBOII. Okay. And if you go to her Instagram, I believe she tagged us. You might see it from her profile. You'll see where she has him off leash, and she wrote this like long. She called it ode to like Canid Perspective, where she's like, e-collars look down upon this and that, but my dog has progressed so much in response to the collar. Okay. So questions.
Do they?
No, I was just curious because we had been told like I had used to have a different collar on him, and that I was
The pressure on the neck?
A thicker collar, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you know what you're doing, but I just
Yes, they're probably worried about the trachea.
Yeah, that whippets, their necks are different. So.
Correct. So here I'm not putting a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And it's more so continuous pressure.
Okay.
So when the dog is pulling and there's pressure on the neck, that's where you're more concerned about the trachea collapsing.
Okay. So you're doing it in a
Yes.
different. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what was. Okay.
I was going to ask if the e-collar, is that an always thing, or is it just for training and eventually he doesn't need it?
That's a good question. It's the most common question I get.
Yeah.
That's a yes and no answer. Okay. When you need it, you have it, is what I say. So like, let's say if he's going to be off leash or anything like that, you want to have your collar on because things can always happen. Most common thing that people have happen to them is someone blows up a random firework and their dog runs away. Okay. So if that happens, you still have your collar, your remote to override the situation because that's not about obedience. If something blows up and he gets scared and runs away, it's not because he's being disobedient. It's because he's scared of the big loud bang, right? So the e-collar allows you to return your dog despite the fear of what's going on, okay? Because it's against instinct to run towards danger. So like we wouldn't run into a burning building unless there was some kind of incentive, right? Our family's in there, our pet is in there, something like that. It's against instinct to knowingly put ourselves in danger. So if he's a great dog inside the house, you don't need it. But if he's ever going to be off leash or if you're going to take him somewhere new and you're going to take him somewhere new, you have your collar so you can help him come back to neutrality, okay? Easiest way to describe it is, do you guys drive?
Yeah.
Have you been on the expressway?
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the way here.
Do you go the speed limit?
Usually around there.
What about other people,
Yeah.
right? So most people speed, right? You see a squad car, what happens,
Yeah. Everyone slows down.
right? That's called opportunistic behavior.
Yeah.
All animals do it, okay? So think of the e-collar as a cop on a collar. When it's present, he's going to behave better. He's going to be able to pacify himself better because he knows there's a means of being able to, something coming in to help him turn off. So it's nothing good or bad, and it has nothing to do with the training that we do because people always ask, like, well, it's such a great tool, why do you need it? And I go, because that's just the way of the world. Like, not even humans, it's okay. Relax. 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 even humans press the boundaries, and we know better, right? So, but for whatever reason, people expect the dog to one day like become a good dog. I go, that's not a thing. That's just like a myth that that's been around like forever. So it's just the way of the world. If he can get away with something, then why shouldn't he not try it? You know? So, questions on any of that stuff? Good.
No.
The hardest part about this is going to be the emotional part. Okay? Because it's in your mind, you're going to think you're hurting your dog. Okay? And if you can't get over that, I can't help you. Just keep that in mind. Okay? I've done this kind of stuff over and over again for 10 plus years. That's why I'm desensitized to it. I see this happen all the time. But it's not because I don't care about the dog. I absolutely do care about the dog. Which is why I'm not just caving in and doing everything that your internal self is telling you to do, right? Like, take that leash off. Let him breathe, right? Let him relax. Right? But that doesn't help him. That helps you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why with the videos and stuff, it's nice because you can just see it. And you go, okay, this is how it works. Here's my visual, this person did it. Okay? Questions?
So, when do you have availability if we wanted to?
That's a Maria question.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't talk about my calendar because it changes all the time.
Got it. Okay.
I have people that are currently in the process of booking, that have had their consultations and everything. So she's the one that knows all that stuff.
But we would do this outside somewhere?
Outside or inside? Most likely for a guy like him, you'd want to go inside
Okay.
because I know people worry about like the reactivity and stuff. The way we operate, it like doesn't matter. The only time that I think about it will matter is those bully breeds, those power breeds, the German Shepherds, the Pit Bulls, and all that stuff. Otherwise, inside or outside doesn't matter in terms of the progress that you're going to make because it's all common sense based. Okay? If inside his number is lower because there's less going on, there's less stimuli, it just means that outside his number will probably be higher, right? Because there's more stimuli to contend with. So if at 20, let's say inside here he's at 20, but outside he could be at 60. Okay? And you have to be willing to go to that level in order to help him. Okay? If you come in and you're like, Jesse, I'm not going past 30, well, like if your dog needs more than 30, then you're stuck. We're not going to get anywhere. Okay? In regards to the collar that I recommend for him, the one that the last young lady did with her whippet was the Black Doctor Black Edition because she didn't want to have to worry about anything. It's the best e-collar, plus it's curved. So for the whippets, it's nicer because they have that thin, scrawny neck. So it curves. So it's, you're more likely to have consistent contact, okay? Whereas the other collars are box shaped, so they have this big old clunky thing here. So people like it because of the aesthetic, but it also is just simply the best collar, okay? Okay. And then Maria will send you all this information as well.
Okay.
This is a day in the office for me.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from. I'm not trying to downplay it.
No, yeah.
But I've seen this many a time before.
Yeah.
But not just him,
Yeah.
the clients.
Yeah.
So that's why I call it now where I'm like, because last thing I want you is to book a time, think you're ready for it, and then you start the training and you're like, I can't. Because then for us, we spent all that time booking the client, and then we have to hold the time, and then somebody else wants the time, and then the other client's like, oh, I can't do this, and we're like, well, that's why we have the consult, okay? Is at this point, that's why I say if you're not willing to go there to help your dog, I can't help you, okay? I understand it all. I understand the psychology of humans. I'm just making that very clear, okay? Any other questions?
Good.
Okay. So Maria will get in contact with you. Otherwise, you can contact her with your availability and everything like that.
Okay.
And she'll send you all the information regarding like calendar and the booking process. Probably wouldn't be till after the new year because the holidays obviously coming up, and this is back-to-back holidays in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
But she'd help you with everything else.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, Snippet.
There you
All
go.
right.
That wasn't so bad, was it? That would be a little extra tired.
Yeah.
He's probably gonna pass out.